Lastly on today's show, we attend the recent St. Paul's Fellowship and Daily Bread fundraiser at the London Club, where Glen Pearson was the guest speaker. He shares with Life and Faith about how the demographic of those using the service has changed and why.
I guess the important thing to remember is it's widened over time. So it used to be more people who were on social assistance back in the 80s, early 90s who were having difficulty. Social agencies couldn't meet the demand. But, you know, and then all of a sudden we started seeing more students who couldn't afford university who were having difficulty. And now we've got seniors and others who are coming to us. But I would say the biggest thing we've seen in the last year, the biggest change, has been people that were working just a year ago. I do think that the local economic downturn and worldwide economic downturn was difficult, but I think for London a lot of manufacturing jobs were lost for good. And for a lot of those people it was a real adjustment. So we began to see people from Fort Talbotville, people from Electric Motive. These are people that, you know, just a year ago were making $60,000, $80,000 a year, really good jobs, good benefits, and real contributors to our community. So I think the big story is I think it has widened over the decades, but now it seems to cover almost every sector, and I think that's a troubling issue.
And my guess is that it ranges from people who need to use the food bank frequently to probably a lot of people who maybe only need to use it once a year, but that's still a troubling understanding.
I think about 71% of the people who come to the London Food Bank, they're allowed to get help once a month. They come to us 3 times a year or less. Over 50% come once. They get 3 days worth of food. So basically the people who are using food banks, and this has stayed fairly consistent over time, they are people who are trying to get over a tough week, right? Maybe the paycheck was late, maybe they just got laid off, they don't know where to go, what to access, and so they end up coming to the food bank. But the fact that those numbers have not climbed into a significant dependency issue I think is very interesting, and I think it speaks a lot about Canadians. You know, as much as they'll come to a food bank when they're desperate, they don't want to live in a lifestyle that's going to depend on them.
Do you see this problem getting worse? Do you see it getting better? I know it's hard to look ahead, but can you see a day when the food banks will be less needed?
I can't at all. In fact, I can only see it getting worse. I mean, I was an MP, as people know, for 4.5 years. At no point were we able to persuade Ottawa at all to take poverty seriously. And those numbers have increased. So our highest numbers happened just this last month, where we're helping 3,600 families a month in London. That doesn't count all the other social agencies that we give food to. So our numbers are climbing and climbing and climbing. We started with 300 families a month, now we're way up to this. And I think people are all going, gee, it's too bad we need food banks, but whatever is going to be required that will lessen the demand on food banks and the need for them, it doesn't seem society is ready to go that way yet.
That leads us to the third area of the conversation, and that is, what can the rest of us do?
I think it's time that, you know, I'm just being honest with you, but, you know, giving food to a food bank is essential and it feeds families. But this has been going on for 30 years. And food banks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Poverty is now affecting every sector of society. So at what point do we say, you know what, maybe this isn't the best idea? I think we need citizens who are going to start, you know, speaking out more, start working through their institutions that they go to, whether it's churches or service clubs or schools, whatever. But I think at some point it will hit the voting patterns. It doesn't matter what party was in power in Ottawa. And, you know, the last 30 years, there's been a lot of that. They never put a dent in it. And so I think it's really significant that people learn how to speak up and demand of their elected representatives. They don't want to live in a country that's got more and more people living in poverty every year. That's even in the good times. I was there in Ottawa when they, in 1989, when they said they were going to get rid of child poverty by the year 2000. It's now doubled. And what happened to that? That was a unanimous vote. Everybody agreed with it. So I think what's lacking, it seems to me, is both citizen and political will. It's not good enough to give to a food bank, and it's not good enough to give platitudes as a politician during a charity drive. We're all going to have to cobble together ourselves in a way that's better suited, I think, to social justice and helping people in need.
Do you think there's a sense that a lot of people would like to help and would like to be advocates, but they just don't know what to do? So if somebody is watching today that, yeah, I agree with what Glen just said, what would you suggest to them as a place to start, a way to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, there are traditional things like letters to the editor and things like that that have been done, but I also think, You know, people have all sorts of opportunities through the institutions that they go to. The chances are really good. If you go to Western, they've already had a big food drive for the food bank, right? If you go to a Kiwanis Club, they've already done the same thing. So it's more being part of the institutions that you're already part of and doing things. We have kids that have birthday parties. You know, the kids are 7 or 8 years old and they have birthday parties and they collect food. But in their schools, they're trying to get the schools to teach them about how do people end up in poverty. So from the very youngest age to the oldest, I think people can get involved, but start demanding your institution show a greater sensitivity, and that includes the media and politics, to show a greater sensitivity towards people that are in need.
But it really is systemic, is what you're saying, to our society, and changing the systems is not easy.
No.
Can you share some, I know it's a tough question, but if there's one thing that we need to do to begin to make the change in the system, the systemic poverty being part of our fabric almost, what's the one, if there's one thing that we really could emphasize to get working on to make that change?
I think vote to parties that are responsible. But the other thing is that, as I'm saying at the soup and sandwich dinner, is that I'm talking about talking the walk. The faith communities in this country do fantastic work in the social sector, fantastic, but they hardly ever speak up. So although they're providing the majority of the care almost in any community, they're also the ones that are very quiet. And I think we have to begin to realize that, and for our faith institutions and others to begin raising our voices. That's what this session that I'm going to be speaking at, we've already met with the mayor at City Hall from Multi-Faith Group and others. I think it's time that people just began to realize that it's not enough to give somebody food anymore. It's just not. And it's not enough to just give somebody social or affordable housing. You know, we've put elected governments in place of any party, and through the greatest time, we've had more money going through Canada than at any other time in our history. And we're not getting it. Middle-class families aren't getting it, students aren't getting it, people that are poor are definitely not getting it. Is this the kind of society we want? So let's use the institutions that you're part of and speak up and start demanding that they speak up too, if you want to be a good part of it.
A challenge from Glen Pearson, I'd say a good challenge, and we thank Glen for joining us today on Life and Faith. This is Reverend Keith Nethery.
Thank you for watching today. We hope you've enjoyed this season of Life and Faith. If you'd like to view any of our past programs, check out the video archives at lifeandfaith.ca. So from us to you, have a wonderful summer. Bye for now.